Hey everyone, welcome to this free training, how to grow website impact in the year 2026. The fact is, we all want the same things out of our website, right? We want to actually get results. And so it doesn't matter if you're a business, that probably is translated as, hey, we want more leads, we want more sales, we want more clients or customers. For a nonprofit, your fundraising initiatives, right? You want to increase your giving or the amount of volunteers or partnerships that your nonprofit is able to get from your website. For a church, maybe it's just getting more families and more people from the community to actually step foot through the doors of your church on a Sunday morning. But regardless, your website needs to be more than just an expensive digital accessory, something that's beautiful. Yes, that's important. Aesthetic and look and feel, that's important. But really, it should be driving results for your brand and for your organization. The problem is so many people that already have websites are just thinking of your website as just an asset. And it's just an asset that looks nice, but it doesn't actually drive traffic or drive results or bring us the leads, the sales, the partnerships, and the donations. And so today we're going to be talking about why this is and really what a good framework for strategy is for your website so that you can actually get more out of your website and just kind of increase the return on investment that your website is bringing to your brand. So really quickly though, just the landscape of website design right now, there is a higher competition in the year 2026 for websites than ever before. And the big reason for this, back in the old days, having a website was sort of a novelty. It was something that was actually impressive, just the fact that you had one to begin with. It's no longer impressive to simply have a website. You need to have the right website that's actually doing the right things for your brand. And the competition is higher than ever before for low effort websites. Because as we can see here, people are using AI to build websites. They're using templates to build websites. So somebody could just simply create a Wix account or a Squarespace account or a WordPress account and pick out a template, change their logo, and then boom, there's your new website. And so there's a few different problems with this. Problem number one is you're going to have the same website as the same a business down the street that does the same thing as you. So let's say that you are a pizza shop and you are using a Squarespace pizza shop template. You're changing out your logo, maybe changing out like a line of text or two. But if the pizza shop down the street does the exact same thing, somebody would go to your website and then their website. Wait, are these two websites related? Are these like sister companies? And the fact is, you're going to have a website that looks very similar to somebody else's. The other problem here is you are unique. It doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit or a business or a church. You have a unique DNA as a brand and as an organization. And so your website should also have a unique DNA. You have a different market. You have a different client avatar. You are reaching a different audience. You have different team members and experiences as a staff. Your services are a little bit different than the services that your competition is offering. So because of that, your website also needs to be different. It needs to reflect the unique DNA that your brand has. So cookie cutter isn't cutting it anymore. So this is the big word that we say all the time around here is intentionality. We believe in intentionality really holistically in every part of life. Of course, with your finances, you need to be intentional if you actually want to see results and get traction from your finances. With your health, with your relationships, really every single area of your life, it's important to be intentional. And around here, we say it all the time, and it's a big part of just the culture at Ritchey Creative in the websites that we're building, in the brands that we're building. We want to make sure that we're actually being really intentional along the way. And part of that stems from some of my story. And so I'm just going to share this really briefly here, but this was me over 10 years ago and about 80 pounds heavier than I am right now. I went through a season of just no intentionality, a lack of effort, a lack of willpower. And I struggled to get off the physical couch and the proverbial couch in so many areas of my life. My relationships were struggling. My finances were struggling. There was one month that I actually had to borrow rent money from my mom, in order to pay rent that month. And, I paid her back. But for me as a young adult, that was an embarrassing moment. It was something where I thought to myself, I need to figure out what the solution is and how I can get myself into a position where this never happens again. And as you can see here, I was incredibly more heavy than I am now, about 80 pounds heavier. And so I looked at myself in the mirror one day, I stepped on a scale and I saw that my weight was right around 290 pounds. And I thought to myself, I need to do something. I need to actually make a pivot and make a change. And so I created a plan. I made a plan to, be at a caloric deficit every single day. I tracked my calories. I started to work out. And just little by little, I lost 5 pounds and then 10 pounds and then 15 pounds and then 20 pounds and ended up losing about, 80 pounds from, when I started to when I finished. And so, it was an effort of intentionality, trying to build intentionality into that part of my life. Anyways, fast forward, of course, my wife and I, we were able to also bake intentionality into our finances and pay off some debt, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. I have another picture to show you in just a bit. But when it comes to our business, it's the same way. If we actually want to see growth as an agency and be able to help our clients to achieve more success in their businesses and nonprofits and churches, we know that it's important to bake intentionality into the brands we're building, the logos we're designing, the websites that we're building. And so we're going to be unpacking in this series, or in this free training here, the website strategy roadmap. So this is something that we have coined essentially as, in my opinion, the best website strategy in the year 2026 that you can implement into your website if you really want to build a website and have a website that is built with intentionality. So just kind of really quickly here, you can see the roadmap. It starts with mission, which is the map, which we're going to unpack in just a second. And then messaging is part 2, a series of road signs. And then marketing, a billboard. And then meaningful experiences, the enjoyable journey. So mission, messaging, marketing, and meaningful experiences. By the way, any point during this training, if you want to purchase the actual book that we wrote about this framework called the Website Strategy Roadmap, you can scan the QR code there. We'll also put the link in the description for the video. But if you really just want to unpack this, really take a deep dive, the book from the start of the book all the way to finishing the book, it essentially walks you through how you can actually build an intentional website from start to finish. Using this framework, it goes in way more detail than we're going to cover in today's training. But again, we're going to do our best job to really hit a lot of the highlights in this free training as well. And really, we talked about mission, messaging, marketing, and meaningful experiences. You need to have all 4 of those. And so, and again, we're going to unpack what they are in just a second. But if you skip mission, if you say, well, we don't really need to be like worrying about the mission, let's just fast forward. Let's kind of skip through that. Well, if you don't have mission, then you'll aim at nothing. So Zig Ziglar is famous for having a quote that says, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. That's the fact. It doesn't matter, what facet of your life you're talking about. If you don't actually know what you're wanting your website to do or what you're wanting to achieve, you're not going to know if you've hit success or not. If you skip messaging, your audience will be confused. It's important that, especially on our websites, we're being extremely clear and compelling with our messaging. Again, low effort websites are easier than ever, so the competition is higher than ever, which means if you really want to stand out, a big part of that comes with messaging, making sure that your messaging is clear and compelling, and then it's actually written and positioned the right way on the website to where it's funneling somebody to actually take action. If you skip marketing, no one will show up. How are you getting people to your website? Once they're there, how are you capturing lead information, email addresses, phone numbers? And then how are you nurturing those email addresses over time? So it's really important that we implement some really good marketing principles in our website as well if we actually want to see results. And then if you skip meaningful experiences, even those who visit won't stick around. If they come to your website and it's clunky, it's wonky, it's not mobile responsive, it's hard to navigate, it's hard to find what they're wanting to do, there's friction, then they're actually going to bounce and go somewhere else. So again, you really need all 4 parts of this framework, and we're going to unpack those in detail here right now. So let's go ahead and start with mission, which is the compass. As we talked about before, you need to know where you're actually headed and have something that's pointing you in the right direction. Otherwise, you're not going to know if you've actually achieved success or not. When I was in college, a group of buddies and I, we decided to go all the way from Georgia to the Grand Canyon. So a cross-country trip. And, the big navigation tool we were using at the time was our cell phones, our iPhones. And so I distinctly remember being on the leg of the journey where I was driving. I was responsible for our navigation and getting us from point A to point B. And I was, following the GPS. And then all of a sudden, my iPhone died. And I remember thinking, I actually have no idea where to go next. I don't have any navigation. And so, of course, we pulled out a charger, we charged the iPhone, everything was fine. But it really made me realize how dependent I was on something pointing me in the right direction, something that's actually helping the navigation process. And so our compass for the website strategy roadmap for this part of the website strategy is this compass here, which we're going to kind of go through each of these just briefly. But the first one of the first part of the compass, you can see at the very top, is passion and purpose, and then setting goals, and then tracking goals, and then course correcting. So passionate purpose, what we're really saying here is we need to have some purpose that is bigger than just making money. That is the reason we have a website. Some purpose that is just bigger than making a name for ourselves. That is the purpose of the website. So how are we actually adding benefit to people? How are we making the world a better place? How are we doing more good in the world? And the reason this is important is if you don't have a passionate purpose, you're going to experience burnout very quickly. You're going to get frustrated, discouraged, and you're going to give up on your website altogether. So you need something that's actually tethering you, keeping you focused on the goal at hand and reminding you why you're doing it in the first place. Here's some examples of passionate purpose for different industries. One is for a business, one is for a nonprofit, and one is for a church. And this is not necessarily your clarity statement. So we'll talk more about a clarity statement in the messaging portion of this free training. But this is essentially what we're saying here is this is an internal statement, a passionate purpose, something that's internal that is really just for you and your team so that you can rally behind a vision and a mission bigger than simply what you're doing day to day. So it's not just plumbing. It's not just HVAC. It's not just building houses. But like, what's the real reason that we're tethered toward our goals for our website? So here's an example from a business, Tracy's Mobile Pet Grooming Service. The passionate purpose could be our business's website is a tool that helps us bring pet grooming services to the homes of our clients so that busy families can get their time back. And your team can rally behind that. You can get excited about that. And as you're kind of working through the website strategy roadmap, that's going to kind of keep you excited and keep you tethered towards your goals. Another example here from a nonprofit, Daybright Mentoring Center. So this example could be, our nonprofit's website is a tool that connects the youth of our community with certified mentors who can invest in their future and help them live lives of meaning. And then one more example, just from a church's perspective, could be for Palm Brook Baptist Church. Our church website is a tool that helps our members connect deeply with one another in fellowship through events and small groups and provides a clear path for new visitors to be warmly acclimated into the life of our church. So maybe that's something that excites you. Maybe that's something that reminds you, hey, this is why we're doing it in the first place. Here's one picture that's kind of fun. So this is a little bit of a personal story from my life. This is a playground that we basically built in our backyard. And it was the first time that I had ever done this. I have two little kids at home. One is 4 and one is 2. And my wife and I, we wanted to build this playground. So we purchased it online. It showed up to our house. And I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting it to kind of come in slabs that were already kind of put together. And then you just kind of put a couple of the pieces together or something like that. This was a project that took me, no joke, 2 days. And every single slab of wood was separate. So I had to, from scratch, build everything here that you see in the picture. And even the holes for the screws weren't drilled all the way. So I had to drill some of the holes. And it was just like a intense project. And I remember just being out there. And this took place in the winter. So it was actually a Christmas present for our kids, for our girls. And it was freezing. I remember just being out there freezing. And then I actually only had a battery powered drill at the time. And so the battery kept dying, and then I would charge it, I'd come back out, it would die again. And I just didn't even have the torque that I needed in order to actually build, a project like this. So I had to go to Home Depot, buy a new drill. So the whole time I'm pulling my hair out, frustrated, cold, a little bit miserable. But the thing that kept me tethered, the thing that kept me going, the thing that kept me motivated was thinking about my kids' smiles, the laughter they would have, the fun they would have, climbing up and swinging and going down the slide. And so that was my passionate purpose for that project. So I would just think through, what is the passionate purpose for your business, for your nonprofit, for your church? Not the actual thing you're doing day to day, but the deeper meaning, the actual good you're doing in the world, how you're making people's lives better, because that's going to keep you tethered when things get difficult. Or if you're not seeing the results you want from your website right away, it's going to keep you motivated so that you don't give up. Okay, the next part of the compass here. So we talked about there's 4 parts to this compass. And the second part is goal setting. So after passionate purpose, we have goal setting. And it's really important as we're setting goals for our website. And we're going to give you some really good examples of specific goals that you can set for your website in just a second. But they need to be SMART goals. And so again, you're probably familiar with SMART goals. I'm not going to go into it a ton here, but we want our goals to be specific and measurable and achievable and relevant and time bound. Because if you're missing one of those things, then you're not going to actually have a detailed goal. And if your goals aren't detailed, there's a higher chance that you won't actually follow through. So here's an example. So let's say that I wanted to lose 15 pounds. It would not be a SMART goal for me just to say, I want to lose 15 pounds. It would be a SMART goal if I said, I will exercise for 30 minutes on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays and strive for a caloric deficit of 500 calories per day in order to lose 15 pounds by March 1st. So again, SMART goal. It's specific, it's measurable, achievable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. So again, as you're setting goals, you want to make sure that you're using that framework of SMART so that you're actually going to be more likely to actually achieve the goals on your website. So for a website specifically, what are things that you might set goals around? Well, you might set goals around the number of website visitors that you get weekly or monthly or quarterly. the number of buttons clicked, emails collected, form submissions, video plays, e-commerce transactions, donations, leads acquired, strategy sessions booked, newsletter subscribers. So a ton of things that you might set goals around. I would just say you don't have to, set goals for every single one of these. But again, if you're not actually setting goals for your website, then you're going to be a little bit lethargic. I'm just telling you right now, if you're somebody that builds a website and just sets it up and does low effort like everybody else, and you're not really thinking through some of these like deeper core things related to your website strategy, then you're probably also going to be somebody that isn't always thinking about making it better and optimizing. And if you're doing that, you're going to be left behind. You need to be really thinking through intentionality, setting clear goals for your website. And then after you set the goals, you need to track goals. So it would do you no good if you said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lose this weight, whatever. But then you actually never tracked your calories. You never actually, found any way to actually see, am I on track? Am I off track? In the finance world, I kind of alluded to this in the beginning of the training. But my wife and I, when I had graduated from college, I brought the student loan debt into our marriage of $26,000. And now for some of you guys, you might say, man, $26,000, that's a lot. And it was for us. Some of you might say, man, I have $100,000 in student loans. $26,000 is nothing. And so, but for me, it felt like this incredible mountain that I would never be able to climb, and this incredible feat that we would never be able to vanquish. And we didn't know what to do. And so we got married, and my wife's a very visual person and very analytical. And she had the idea of, hey, why don't we just print out a old school thermometer that we can kind of fill in as we're making progress on these goals over time. And so that's what we did. And so you can see here, a picture of this. And every time that we would be able to put an extra $500 or $1,000 that month or $2,000 that month, then we would use a red expo marker and just kind of fill in the chart. But that was our way of little by little tracking those goals over time, which really helped us to get out of debt much faster. So anyways, it's important to set your goals, but don't just set it and forget it. You need to actually track your goals so you know if you're actually getting close or not, or if you need to be changing things along the way. There is something in the business world. I know this might sound a little bit complicated if you don't have a business background, and that's okay, but they're called lead measures and lag measures. So a lag measure would be the actual result that you want, the actual goals that you want. And the lead measures are the things that are getting you to that point, the little actions that are driving those results for you. And so be thinking through, okay, if I have this goal related to website visitors, okay, that might be the lag measure. The lead measure is, what are the different ways that we're going to get those visitors? A certain amount of social media posts per month, a certain amount of, emails that we're sending to our email list per month that are then driving traffic to our website. And so what are like the little things that you can actually, say, hey, if I do this, and this, your lead measures, then it's going to result eventually in this, our lag measures. And then of course you need to set goals, track goals, but then also measure and course correct over time. So this is really important too. There are KPI dashboards. There you can use analytics. So if you have a Squarespace website, they have a really good analytics, built-in analytics feature where you can kind of see the amount of visitors per month, the amount of traffic, where people are coming from. They're coming from Instagram or Facebook. And then if you have a WordPress website, you can install a plugin like Jetpack or a similar plugin, and you can see some really good analytics in a dashboard as well. And then of course, with your email software, whether you use MailChimp or MailerLite or something else, you can see really good analytics there as well. This is an example of a KPI dashboard. So there's a lot of different dashboards like this that put everything onto one page. So as you're setting goals and tracking goals and measuring goals for your website, then you can kind of see everything on one screen. You can see, okay, here are the amount of leads we've gotten, the amount of like form submissions, the amount of calls or clicks. Here's where traffic is coming from. And so it's a really good way just to see like in a snapshot, okay, we're on track with goals. Or maybe one month you're not on track and the numbers are lower than they usually are. You can think through, okay, is it seasonal or is there a reason that things are lower than normal? What can we do to course correct and change things over time? So we're about to get to the fun part in just a second, which is moving into messaging and then marketing and then meaningful experiences. I know this first section of mission might not sound as important, but I guarantee you, the people who aren't setting a really good foundation for where are we going, why are we going there in the first place, and then how do we kind of measure and course correct, those are the people that aren't going to have results if they're not actually building a good foundation. So again, you need to have a compass that's pointing in the right direction, passionate purpose, setting goals, tracking goals, and then again, course correcting for your website's goals and purpose. Okay, so moving out of mission, which is the map, into messaging, which is a series of road signs. So these are some pictures here from a trip that I took to Indonesia probably around a decade ago. And it was great. I went with some buddies of mine and we had a great time. We were doing some missions work and then also doing some HIV and AIDS clinics and some different islands throughout the country of Indonesia. We were doing some soccer clinics as well. And so, it was a great experience. But I will say this, if you've never been to a different country, and without knowing the language, it is a very tricky thing to be able to navigate. You're driving down the road, you're seeing all these signs, everything's in a different language, even just road signs. It's just hard to know where to go. Even just talking to people, you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I get to this place? And just having dialogue and interactions with people, if you don't know the language, is very tricky. And so I had with me a buddy of mine, his name was Nathan, and he actually grew up in Indonesia. And so when we were walking through the streets of, either Sentani or Jakarta or Bandung, he was able to kind of be my voice. He was able to be a translator so that I could ask some questions of people and we could actually figure out, okay, where do we need to go? How long is it going to take for us to get there? But basically, here's the point, is if you don't speak the same language as somebody else, communication is very difficult. And so it's very important that we're actually speaking the right language to our website visitor. So you could have a great product as a business or a great way that you're helping the community as a nonprofit. But if you aren't actually communicating that with plain English in a way to where it's compelling to them and to your specific visitor, then it's not going to actually get you the traction and the action that you wanted to in the first place. So we recommend the best way to, fix this and to make sure that you're speaking the same language as somebody or as your website visitor is really pinning down who is my ideal client avatar. Now, there's a lot of different names for this. Ideal client avatar is what we use, but you probably have also heard it as an ICP, an ideal client profile. But really what we're saying here is there's one person who is your primary audience. And so, I used to work in a leadership role for a small nonprofit that, we hosted day camps, summer camps, races, different events for the community. And we would, when it came time to actually building and planning for our summer camp, we had a lot of different audiences. We had camps that we were trying to market to. We had parents was one of our audiences. We had summer staff that we were trying to market to as one of our audiences. We had church hosts who would host the camp, for a week during the summer. That was one of our audiences. And so for each of those, we had to think through, okay, what is our, who is the parent? Okay, it's a mom. She's probably 32. We literally would even put names to these people. And so that'd be my next recommendation is for your website. It doesn't matter if you're a business, church, or nonprofit. I would just say, give the person a name. Who are you speaking to? Who are you wanting to actually market to as you're building a good website strategy here? And then give them a bio. Like, what do they enjoy doing? What are their struggles? What are their frustrations and pain points? And then what do they actually want? What's the big end goal for them? And if you can build an ideal client profile or an ideal client avatar for your, primary audience for your website, as you're writing messaging, as you're writing email copy, as you're writing social media posts, all of that is going to be more effective because you have this person in mind. So that'd be the first thing I'd recommend in terms of messaging. The next thing with messaging that we really want to highlight here for website strategy is something that we refer to as the clarity statement. So before or above the fold on a website, which just means before you scroll one time on a website, you want to have a really, really clear and compelling clarity statement. And so just one sentence, maybe two, that answers these three questions. Who are you? What do you do? And how are you actually making somebody's life better? So this is something that we see all the time. And it's actually pretty unfortunate because this could be, Highview Roofing. This is a fictitious roofing company, but they might be the best. They might have, a great team with great customer service, all this stuff. But if above the fold on the website, it just says in business for 50 years, we don't even know what kind of business you are. There's a house. Are you a real estate company? Are you a realtor? Are you a home builder? Are you a roofing company? Are you an exterior painter? And so it doesn't say anything. So again, we want to be really clear above the fold who we are, what we do, how we make somebody's life better. So here is an example of this done well. So if this was a above the fold section for Highview Roofing, it might say keeping you covered. And then it might say the clarity statement there, which is we're a premier roofing company that offers hassle-free roofing services so that you can get back to making memories in the home you love with the family you love. So right away, we know who they are, we know what they do. And that last one there, so that you can make memories in the home you love with the family you love, that kind of pulls at the emotional heartstrings a little bit because that's the one that says, how are you actually going to make my life better? Okay, moving on to the next thing that we usually try to cover here in the topic of messaging for website strategy. We call this the crucial content framework. the crucial content framework essentially is just from the top of the website all the way to the bottom of the website. So from the header to the footer, what are the sections that we recommend building into the homepage of your website? And so just kind of really quickly to touch on these, of course, you have your header, right? So you want to have that's that strip at the top that has logo, navigation bar, and then ideally a call to action button. So you can see even in this last example, we have logo, we have a navigation bar, and then we have that get a quote button. Then the above the fold section. So this is the above the fold section right here. You have a nice image in the background, and this is actually not even a highly optimized version of an above the fold section because of that photo of the house. So in a little bit, I'm going to show you an example of how this could even be better in the marketing section of this training. And then underneath the above the fold section, which again, it answers those questions. Who are you? What do you do? How do you make someone's life better? Then you have a section called identifying the problem. This is where you're basically using icons and little text blocks to paint the stakes. Hey, here's some friction that you've probably been experiencing. Here's a problem that you've probably, faced in the past. So we're painting the stakes. We're talking about the problem. And then underneath that, directly underneath the problem section, you want to have a section that positions yourself as a solution to those pain points and to that problem. And then underneath that, clear process. People need to be led. They need to be guided on a website. And so, step 1, step 2, step 3, make it really easy for people to know, here's how you can actually take the next step with our brand and with our organization. Underneath that, we have the testimonial section. You need social proof. If you actually want your website visitor to convert into a paying customer or a lead or a donor or a volunteer, then, testimonials are great because it shows other people, not just you talking about yourself, but other people talking about how great you are and the experience that they had working with your brand. And then underneath that, the lead generator section. You would be shocked how many websites, even of great businesses or nonprofits or churches, that just don't have any way to capture information, no way to capture email addresses. So the lead generator, what we're saying is there some way to, offer some really good free value in exchange for an email address or a phone number? And so we'll talk more about that later in the marketing section. And then, of course, the footer. The footer should not just be something that is overlooked as an afterthought because it's on every page. It's a global element. So it doesn't matter what page of your website somebody's on. Eventually, they'll scroll down and they'll get to the footer. So you want to have a logo. You want to have quick links that people might want easy access to. You want to have contact information, another button. That's a great spot for another call to action button. And so, again, make sure that you're including the right things there in the footer. By the way, I just kind of went through those super quickly. But if you want to take a deep dive in the crucial content framework, we put together a free course called the Homepage Messaging Makeover. And essentially, that's what this is. If you scan the QR code there, it basically walks you through all of those 8 different sections and really unpacks them in detail so that you can really, have somebody, me, walk you through, section by section, the recommendations I recommend, in addition to some really good examples along the way. So, totally free course. You can scan the QR code there. It doesn't cost even $1. Literally, it's completely free. And the goal is to be able to walk you through an entire homepage from start to finish, and how you could build out these sections to, again, funnel somebody into actually taking action on your website. Okay, so the next thing that we like to talk about in terms of messaging, so this is the final leg of messaging for this free training, is your call to action buttons. I have been on websites, no joke, hundreds of them, thousands of them, just because we do, web clarity sessions and different, session audits or website audit sessions for, great businesses and nonprofits and churches. And you would be shocked how many of them have pretty good messaging, really good aesthetic and visual look and feel, but there's no call to action. So people don't know what to do next. They might even think, this sounds like a great business. I'm interested. I want to work with them. But what do I actually do? There's no get started button. There's no get a free quote. There's no learn more. You're scrolling down. It's just information. And there's no buttons that's actually funneling somebody to donate or get a quote or plan their visit. And so you want to have a good quantity of call to action buttons, as you can see here, but you also want to have quality. So by quantity, my recommendation really is as you're scrolling down these sections that we just talked about, down your homepage, I would recommend having a button in each of those sections. So for, the above the fold section, of course, a primary call to action is probably good there. So for a business, something like get a free quote, or, book now or something like that. Or for a nonprofit, donate, or get involved. For a church, plan a visit, what to expect. Those are great call to action buttons. But then if you have, a section that talks about you, then, a call to action button to your about page to funnel them to that page. If you're a church and you're scrolling down and then there's a section that talks about, giving, then have a link or a button to your giving page. So anyways, really just think through as you're going down the sections of your website, are we actually putting call to action buttons there that are obviously clickable so that we can actually drive people to be funneled into the things that we want them to be funneled into? And then of course we have quality as well. So what we mean by this is there are two spots on a website that are the number one pieces of real estate for an intentional button to push. Number one is top right corner. So this is, if you don't hear anything else in this part of the training, hear this. Put a button in the top right corner of your website that is obviously clickable. The eye naturally gravitates there. If somebody's ready to make a decision on a shopping website, they're going to look for the cart or the shop icon in the top right corner. On a nonprofit, they're going to look for donate or give. If you're on a church website, they're going to look for plan a visit or I'm new or what to expect. So top right corner. And then spot number two, in terms of quality for call to action placement, is right underneath your clarity statement. So if we kind of go back to the example we looked at here, you can see top right corner, get a quote. And then underneath that clarity statement, we have a get a quote as well. Okay, moving on to marketing. So far we've talked about mission, the importance of having mission with our passionate purpose and goal setting and goal tracking and measuring and course correcting over time. We talked about messaging and all of those different things related to messaging, from calls to action to the sections that need to show up in what specific order to having a clear and compelling clarity statement. Now with marketing, this is where we're actually going to dive into look and feel, aesthetics, marketing principles. How are we capturing email addresses? And then how are we nurturing those email addresses over time? So this is a very important part as well. So let's go ahead and hop into the first part here, which is branding 101. So your logo, of course, needs to show up on your website. That is the foundation of your entire visual brand. Everything else stems from your logo, or at least it should. Your colors. Color theory is important. And we have other, videos on YouTube and other trainings we've done talking about color theory, but colors make people feel a certain way, right? So there's a reason that McDonald's and Arby's and Hardee's are using red and yellow, because red is a color that evokes feelings of passion and appetite and urgency. And yellow is a color that evokes, feelings of happiness and satisfaction. A lot of banks use the color blue because blue is a color that elicits feelings of trust. And so really think through, for our brand, are we actually using the right colors in the first place for our marketing materials, for our website? And then of course, fonts, same thing. There's, sans serif fonts, which are fonts like the ones that are on this presentation that feel modern and sleek and clean. But then there are serif fonts, which are ones that have serifs on the lettering, and those can feel very academic. So if you're a school, if you are a more old school traditional liturgical church, if you are, an accounting firm or a law firm, then serif typefaces might be a good move for you. And of course, there's cursive, there's script typefaces. There's a lot of different kinds of fonts. But don't just pick out a font willy-nilly. People spend more time picking out what they're going to wear during the week than they do thinking through the colors and the fonts for their brand. So really just put some intentionality. That's the big stress here. Just think about it. Put some actual thought and intentionality into the colors, fonts. And then of course we have photos here as well. So, you've heard the phrase, a photo is worth 1,000 words. And that is true, especially if you're using the right kind of photo. So I'm going to show you an example here in just a second of how having a picture of a building is far less impactful than a photo of happy smiling people. So I would just say my biggest recommendation for photos on your website, have happy smiling people everywhere. If you're a church, show people, worshiping and being in connect groups and small groups. If you're a nonprofit, show pictures of the people that you're helping in the community and volunteers who are pitching in. If you're a business, photos of you sitting with your customers, sitting with your clients that are happy and smiling, because it's going to elicit feelings of, really what it's going to do is it's going to elicit an emotional response where they see themselves in those photos. And also it takes away a little bit of the fear of the unknown, where they say, okay, if I work with them, then I'm going to be happy too. I'm going to be satisfied as well. So anyways, photos are important. Design assets. You can see here on the presentation, we have those plus signs. That's part of our logo. So it's in our logo at Ritchey Creative. And so we're using those as complementary assets. So are there assets that you can use to be visually appealing, not distracting, but visually appealing on your website as well? And then of course, a style guide. If you don't have a style guide, I'd recommend one highly. This is usually a 5 to 7 page document. Now it could be larger if you have a more comprehensive brand guidelines, but a style guide, usually we're saying, hey, here's the approved color codes for our logo. Here's the approved fonts that we use in our logo. Here's how to use the logo. Here's how not to. Don't stretch it. Don't warp it. Don't put a weird drop shadow behind it. So anyways, just make sure, as far as marketing goes on your website, make sure that you're visually implementing the right things that we just talked about here. So I mentioned a minute ago the power of photo and how a photo of a building is far less emotional or less compelling than a photo of happy, smiling people. So we looked at this example earlier from High View Roofing. So you can see they just have a picture of a home. But if you could have a picture like this of a family that is happy, smiling with their home in the background, that is going to be far more triggering in a good way for somebody. And it's going to be more compelling because they see that and they say, okay, if I use High View Roofing, I'm going to be able to be at peace and at rest and make memories with my family as well. Okay, the next thing here with marketing. So we talked about the importance of branding and aesthetic and look and feel. But the next thing with marketing for the website strategy roadmap that we unpack is SEO. So SEO is essentially your search engine optimization. So if somebody, is looking for a roofing company in Lakeland, Florida, and they're typing in, I'm looking for a roofing company in Lakeland, Florida on Google, then the listings that are showing up first are ranking better with SEO than the ones that are on the second page of Google or the third page of Google. And so you want to be optimized well so that you actually show up more quickly. And so just some different tips here that we recommend. And again, we really dive into these deeper in the book. If you were to purchase the book, we have, sections for each of these. But, number one is site speed. If you have tons of videos and media, heavy photo files on your website, there's a lot of things that can clog down the speed of your website. So you want your website to be fast. So really think through what can we do to just make site speed quicker for our website. The next one is backlinks. Essentially, a backlink is anywhere else in the world on a different website that points back to your website. If you get on if you join a chamber of commerce and they have a directory where they list the different organizations and they're listing, they have your website listed and it points to your website, that's a backlink. If you can get featured on other people's blog posts, there's actually a whole strategy called link building where you're writing, you're being an author on different people's blogs. And then they list you and they list your website and they point to your website just so that you can get more backlinks. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. And then Google reviews. If somebody's searching in Google, it stands to reason that Google, you want to make sure that you're in a good standing with Google and that Google thinks you're reputable. Google reviews are a great way to do that. If you are a plumbing company, let's say, in Dallas, Texas, and you have 10 Google reviews and your competition has 80, Google's going to think, okay, well, they have 80 and they only have 10. So the one with 80 is the more reputable option. So just think through, how can we get as many Google reviews as possible? You can give incentives to your clients. You can build some automations or some processes. Maybe every time you finish a job, there's a link or a QR code to, leave a Google review for the work that they did. Okay, blog posts are another great one. So you want good organic keywords on your website. I've been to church websites that don't say the word church anywhere. I've been to business websites that don't say the name of the city that they're serving anywhere. Make sure you're putting location-specific keywords, service-specific keywords through the website. Blog posts are a great opportunity for that. If you can write 60, 80, 100 blog posts on your website that all have really good keywords, then that's going to, of course, help your keyword count so that it's more likely that somebody finds one of those blog posts if they're searching online. Meta tags and meta descriptions. So this is a little bit more technical, so it might sound a little bit complicated, but it's really not. Here's kind of what we're saying here. So this is an example of a meta description. And so basically, if somebody finds your Google listing on Google, what are the descriptions? What does it say? And you can, if you have a WordPress website, you can install a plugin called Yoast SEO to put in, your focus key phrase, your meta tags, meta descriptions, or if you have, Squarespace or something like that, they have some other built-in SEO optimization. But if you don't put anything in intentionally, then what they do is the website will basically, or Google will pull from your website and basically just guess. So it'll do its best job based on what's on your page. But a lot of the time, they just do a bad job. So it's not actually what you would want it to say. So just be intentional, put some intentional meta tags and meta descriptions into the back end. That will help your SEO as well. Okay, moving out of SEO into the world of lead generation. You need to be thinking through how can we actually capture email addresses? Because if somebody is coming to your website and maybe they're not ready to make a full commitment, they're not ready to buy yet, they're not ready to donate yet, but they are sort of interested, then if you could just give some sort of free value in exchange for an email address, then you can take that email address, nurture it over time in an automated funnel until they eventually get nurtured to the point to where they're not a warm lead, but they're a hot lead, or they become a customer. So I'd recommend having a lead generator. Could be a free PDF, could be a checklist, but basically some way to just give free value in exchange for information, then nurture them over time, and then put them into an automated email campaign. And then again, they become not only a warm lead, but a hot lead. And then eventually when they're ready, then they'll say, okay, yeah, let's hire this company. Or yeah, we're ready to volunteer or to give to this nonprofit. So again, really think through what can we do to give value in exchange for contact info. Okay, so far we've talked about the importance of mission, and then messaging. We just finished up marketing. Now, the final part of the website strategy roadmap, the final category, is meaningful experiences. This is the actual enjoyable journey. If you've ever been on a road trip, road trips are no fun. If you get a flat tire, the air condition doesn't work, the radio's staticky or broken, those are pieces of friction. And so you want a smooth ride. So if somebody comes to your website, you want them to experience a smooth ride. So what is a smooth ride in relation to your website? Well, we're going to talk through a few different things here. One is responsive design. 75% of people are coming to your website from a smartphone or tablet. So it might look great in desktop, but if your website doesn't actually look optimized and look good on an iPhone, then you're going to be turning people away. They're going to be confused. They're not going to know what to click. They're going to think, okay, this is not like a legit company, or am I being scammed? And so really think through, what can I do to actually make my website more responsive? Here's some recommendations I would have. Number one, check the layout on all breakpoints. So actually, there's a few different ways to do this. One is to actually test on devices. Pull out your phone, pull out your iPad, pull out your laptop, and check, on all those different devices to make sure it looks good. You can also test it in the website builder. So if you're building in Squarespace or Wix or using Elementor and WordPress or something like that, then those oftentimes have little, buttons for, you can click the phone icon or the tablet icon to see what it looks like in those different breakpoints. Or you can use the inspector tool in Chrome. If you're on your website or on a website and you right click and then click inspect, and then I think inspect element, then you can basically see, it basically gives you, again, those little icons of a phone or a tablet or different, responsive sizes. So you can see actually what it would look like on different devices. And then some different things to check for. So these are basically some of the biggest things that are often missing or broken in terms of responsiveness on a website. Text size is a big one. It might look great on desktop, but on the phone, like the text is too small. We don't want that to happen. Image cropping. The images look great on desktop, but on a phone, the photo's cut off, off the side of the screen. Hyperlinked contact info. This is a big one because the majority of people are coming from a smartphone. In the footer of your website, or really anywhere that you have a phone number listed, or an email address, or a physical address to your actual location, make sure that you're hyperlinking that info. Because if you don't, somebody will be on their phone. They'll have to manually try to copy and paste the phone number or the physical address, or they're going to have to leave your website to go into Google Maps to type it in. If you hyperlink it to a Google Maps link or an Apple Maps link, one tap and boom, instantly it opens up Google Maps or Apple Maps, and they're headed straight to your location. So hyperlink your contact info, and then make sure there's no broken buttons, no broken links. That's the biggest turnoff for somebody, is if they're trying to actually take the next step and they're clicking and it's not working. That is a piece of micro friction that will turn somebody away. Okay, here's a formula that we have basically created that will hopefully help you to reduce some of this friction. We call it the VIS formula. So VIS stands for visualize, identify, and solve. And so what we're saying here is, go to your website right now, or after this video, and visualize that you are a first-time visitor on that website. You've never been there before, and really try to put yourself in the shoes of a first-time person. Then identify, what's the friction? Where are the pain points? What's confusing? Is it hard to navigate? Is something not working when I'm clicking it? So really try to identify the friction and then solve it. Think through what you can do to actually fix those different things, fix those different pieces of friction, so that your website visitor will have a more enjoyable experience. And then the final part here of the meaningful experiences section is just tying up some of these loose ends. So there is something called error pages. So you can see an example here on the top left, that 404 error page. If you don't build an intentionally designed error page, there's just usually a default one that looks pretty off-brand and ugly. So you can actually design, typically depending on your page builder or your CMS that you're building your website in, you can make a custom 404 error page. Then there's your site description, which we talked about earlier as we were talking about meta tags and meta descriptions. Then there's your fab icon. So you can see here, this bottom, if you look on the bottom left graphic, you see that little icon. It has our little Ritchey Creative R icon. That's your fab icon. WordPress by default has a little icon of a globe. Squarespace by default has a little icon of a gray or black square. And so that just feels a little bit unprofessional. So this is just a loose end to tighten up. Put your custom fab icon up there. Form field, error text, validation text. What we're saying here is, if somebody's filling out a form, a contact form, and they type something wrong or they don't fill out a field, then you can give them custom error text. Now, there usually is a default one, but you can write something custom. Or if the form does go through, usually it just says sent or successful. That's fine, but you can also add something custom there as well to make sure that it's on brand with your voice and your messaging. And then this is a important one, sharing graphic. So you can see here on this example on the right side, if you were going to post a website link on Facebook or text it to somebody through iMessage, then it has a sharing image. Now, by default, your website likely is going to try to just pull some random graphic from your website. Oftentimes, the logo, but if the logo is white and the background of Facebook is white, then you're not going to be able to see it. It's going to look like I can kind of see it, but I can't really see it. So just put a custom sharing image. It could be a screenshot like you see here of the homepage of your website, or it could be a picture of a happy smiling person, but put a sharing graphic into your website intentionally. The next one here is spam protection, Google reCAPTCHA. You don't want your forms to be just like attacked by all these like bots, spammy. Like if you've ever gotten like just dozens and dozens of spammy responses in forms from people in India, or like it's just different languages, it looks like Arabic or whatever it is, then a lot of times those are just bots, and we don't want that to happen. So you can use like Google reCAPTCHA is a very popular one. We also have one, it's not a sponsor, but one that we use for pretty much every website we build, which is called CleanTalk. And CleanTalk, you can pay per site. So if you just have one website, that's what you would do. For us, there's also a option for like unlimited sites for a monthly fee. And so we do that. And so CleanTalk's a really great solution as well. And it actually eliminates even the need for Google reCAPTCHA if you have CleanTalk. Okay, so those are some loose ends I would recommend tying up. So again, you have mission. It's important to know where are we going? Why do we have a website in the first place? What kind of goals are we setting? How are we tracking and measuring those goals over time? And then we have our messaging. We want to make sure that we're actually saying the right things. We have the right sections in the right order. We're being very clear. We're being very compelling. The calls to action are built with intentionality. Then we have our marketing, right? This is the aesthetic, the look and the feel. What are we doing to capture lead information and then nurturing those leads over time? Really good SEO practices as well. And then meaningful experiences. When somebody comes to the website, they're having a great experience. They're not wanting to pull their hair out, getting frustrated, getting angry, but they're enjoying being on our website to the point that hopefully it will make them want to actually take the next step with our brand. Again, one last thing I wanted to mention. If you've enjoyed this, and I know a lot of this was a little bit surface level because we don't have hours and hours to unpack each thing here right now. But again, we have this free course, the Homepage Messaging Makeover. If you really wanted to take a deep dive in website strategy, this would be the first thing I'd point you to. This again walks you through from the top of the website all the way to the bottom of a website, the sections that we recommend in the specific order we recommend them being in. And then for each of those, we really break down some examples, some best practices. So you can scan the QR code here or use the link in the description to access the free course for the Homepage Messaging Makeover, or maybe just in general for the website strategy roadmap, mission, messaging, marketing, meaningful experiences. You want to really take a deep dive. You can get the book if you scan the QR code there. Again, from starting the book all the way to the end of the book, it basically helps you build an intentional website strategy using a lot of the strategy notes that we talked about in this call. There's also, with the book, there's a free corresponding PDF that you'll get access to that is actually interactive that you can fill out as you're going through the book. And then really the goal is from the time you start it to finish it, you'll have an intentional strategy built for your organization. Okay, hopefully this was a helpful and beneficial video. Remember, you can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. Stay creative, and we'll catch you next time.